I'm Brian Carpenter, host of Fresh Air at 5, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Sandra T. Elliott, Ph.D. Sandra is a career educator. She has spent over 4 decades working to enhance education for all students. Our focus today is her recently released book, Something is Up, a practical guide to Dyscalculia, tips, tools, and resources for parents, educators, and anyone affected by dyscalculia. Important information. So much to learn. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. And oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How could you do that, you ask? Glad you asked that question. Here are 3 ways. 1, tell a friend and share the links. 2, go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. 3, click on the link on my website homepage to buy me a coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Sandra T. Elliott, Ph.D., is a career educator who has spent over 4 decades working to enhance education for all students and improve schools and their systems around the globe. She has served as a special education teacher, a 5-time principal in Florida and Colorado, a district-level administrator, and state-level consultant. She has held executive-level positions at for-profit education providers and foundations and was part of the EngageNY Eureka Math team and led the TouchMath team that developed DySc, the free Dyscalculia screener for ages 3 through adult. Dr. Elliott is also a member of the UNESCO-sponsored International Edu Summit that meets every other year to write education policy recommendations to be adopted by the United Nations. Dr. Elliott has presented at national and international conferences on mathematics for the struggling student and dyscalculia, has published in national and international journals, and recently released her debut book, Something is Up, a practical guide to dyscalculia, tips, tools, and resources for parents, educators, and anyone affected by dyscalculia. Sandra, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Great to have you here, and I got to start with this, a little bit of your background. You're a former special education teacher. Could you share with us how that experience influenced your career path?
It's been a long and winding road now that I'm retired. It really did start with being a special education teacher because it made me feel like something needed to be done for the students that were not yet being either served or appropriately served in our education system. I was a severe and profound teacher. That's what it was called at the time. Those students were still in institutions. So bringing them out of the institutions in the 70s and into the public school system started my whole path of what can I do to help more and more children each time. That led into the 5 principalships, being an assistant sup in turnaround schools, being an unusual kind of superintendent, being a board member, and then working for the for-profits to start the charter school movement, and right on up through EngageNY and writing what's still arguably the best math curriculum ever written. And then TouchMath, where I got 50-some years worth of history of being effective for students who are struggling, whether it's because they have an IEP or not. And it turns out a lot of it has to do with the true understanding of math and how it should be taught. And it's effective for all kids.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Because the next thing I got to ask about, being a former principal, I had to ask you this. You were a principal in Florida and Colorado. Is there something that you learned during this time in your career that you always want to remember?
That's a great question, Steve. I would have to say the one thing I learned with 20 plus years of doing that and 5 and more schools would be that 90 to 95% of what you do is process and it's the same, but it's that 5% that is the context for that neighborhood, that particular school district, that point in time. That's what makes or breaks you, and being very aware that you've got to flex to the situation The situation's not going to flex to you. It's people.
That's awesome. That really is. And it is so true. So true.
Yes, never.
You've presented at conferences on mathematics on the struggling student and dyscalculia. Could you share with us what dyscalculia is?
Okay, for that, I'm going to actually pull up and read what we're using right now is what I consider a commonly accepted one. And I'm doing some work with the state of Minnesota, and they're coming up with their own, but the International Dyslexia Association and several others are all sort of working to keep refining it. But for right now, I think if we define dyscalculia, and it's a long definition, so I'll say it from beginning to end, it's a multi-component neurodevelopmental disorder that comprises impaired development and disruptions in the neural pathways in the distributed, interconnected regions of the brain that process numerical information and perform math problem solving. That's the long term. I mean, if people could see what I'm doing, it's when we do math, huge areas of our brain light up. Visual, auditory, our language centers, and the two areas in the intraparietal sulcus that do problem solving and actually solve the math. And they add to it the frontal lobes that are doing the executive functioning. Do I listen to Steve, or do I do the math problem? Or is Johnny getting ready to throw something across the room at another student more important than doing my math? That's what it takes to do math. So when you got anything that's going on any of those neural pathways that are connecting all of it at the same time, your math's not going to be so good.
I appreciate you explaining that. And, it's funny because I have to say I'd never heard this word before until I had an interview on my podcast with a young man who, one of the things he told me, he had several challenges, and one of them he told me about was dyscalculia. And I had him explain to me what it was, because that's not really why we were talking. He was talking about being a young adult overcoming things that they had just figured out what his challenges were. And I think this is something important for us as educators, especially, to know more about, so we can be able to assist and address. So, you worked with the TouchMath team that developed DySc, a screener for dyscalculia. Could you share a little bit about what TouchMath is, and then let's talk about the screener?
So, Steve, TouchMath is a 50-plus-year-old company that has developed a curriculum and the instructional strategies that go along with it that support students who struggle with mathematics, primarily those who are severely struggling. We also have a component that works on progress monitoring. We're also moving into the world of AI, but we know from the research that it's based on, and the research that's been done about it in live examples and from the districts that use it, that it's effective because it's about good mathematical foundations and how students actually learn mathematics and build on those foundations.
Awesome. So you developed the DySc, which I understand is a free screener. Can you explain just what that is? I mean, what the term screener means, and then and what it's screening for?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because a lot of people confuse screener with diagnostics. If you screen as having something up, then you must have it. A screener is an initial step that is done to basically sort. It sorts you into, and it's got to be quick. So this is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. A parent or a teacher can do it. And there's 3 versions of it, one for very young children, 3 through 5, and then there's the 6-year-old to 12, and then 12 and adult. But a screener basically, in the course of asking you 30 to 40 questions, very rapid fire, about the 4 areas that are the main struggles for a person with dyscalculia, sorts you into yes, there are some factors here. Maybe there's something going on here, and no, nothing's evident. That information, when combined with what teachers see and other quantitative measures such as state test scores, scores on tests, other observations, can be used by a diagnostician, a school psychologist, to actually diagnose, is this in fact a neurodevelopmental disorder that is severe enough that it will permanently impact the academic ability of this child, and we need to give them the label of having a disability and an IEP. So not everybody's going to be severe enough, but the screener helps do it rapidly. You can do it across all kids. And I actually recommend that students who are scoring at the 40th percentile and below on the state test in math, and the teacher's going, this kid's bright, this kid's, doing well in reading, doing well in other things, give them the time, have the parent do it or them do it, and see if there might be something going on so that they can start child study team.
Gotcha. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some thoughts for parents and teachers here in just a minute, but I want to make sure that I point this out. You released a book this year, and it's called Something is Up, a practical guide to dyscalculia, tips, tools, and resources for parents, educators, and anyone affected by dyscalculia. What inspired you to publish this book?
When I asked 100 people if they knew what dyscalculia was, they all went, what? So, yeah, the fact that if 5 to 7% of the population has dyslexia, and that same 100 people all knew what dyslexia is and could even go, oh yeah, that means you have a problem with reading. It's something going on in the brain. And none of them could tell me anything about dyscalculia, and yet it's the same prevalence. We got a problem. That could explain a lot of what's going on with our math scores, and that is a huge population of students that are not getting supports. But yet we're doing wonderful things for students with dyslexia. So advocacy, awareness, and we know what happened 20 years ago with dyslexia. We had these wonderful marketing campaigns. We had Reading is Fundamental, Reading Rainbow. You had LeVar Burton getting out there and pushing it. You had actors and actresses and musicians going, I have dyslexia. I need help reading. I struggle with this. Nothing was said about math. And we need to change that. So that's what sort of, I'm always looking for the underdog, something that needs to be done. And with TouchMath and what we do, it's a great platform to go, hey, everybody, there's a disability that we're not talking about, we're not diagnosing, and it's very addressable. Nobody would tell a dyslexic student that they could not become a literature professor. We have compensatory strategies and things that they can do to read well, to read efficiently, effectively, and do what they want to do. But yet you have all of these adults who have this disorder of dyscalculia. Nobody tells them that they can be a statistician. They tell them that they can't pass algebra and go to college. That's wrong, just flat out wrong. I almost did an expletive. Oh, almost.
Awesome. So
it's a passion project, Steve, okay?
I got you.
Somebody's got to do something, and it's like, I'm getting ready to retire. So this is a great way to go, after 5 decades, let's get our rear ends in gear and address this problem. Let's get behind it.
So important. All right. So can you give an overview of your book, Something is Up?
I said I wanted to make it practical. So I tried not to use academic language. I tried to explain to everybody in it exactly what dyscalculia was, what it actually looks like, so that when you see an individual who's doing certain things, that you kind of go, that might be this. I went through the actual strategies that work that a parent could do, things like extra rehearsal, having your child count, having your child play with time and direction. I threw in information about screeners because there wasn't one in the US that was free. Usually they were done by a diagnostician and will cost somebody a fair amount of money. So I tried to keep it short and simple, and I've got 2 more in the works. But I think the most important thing I did in the book was I went out and I interviewed a number of adults who didn't find out until later in their lives, like 40s, 50s, even a 60-year-old, and who were then told that they have this disability. And the stories they told were so moving, and the things that they do in order to survive in their careers and be very, very successful were the kind of things that would give hope to parents and others who could read it and go, this person is running a huge chunk of the north part of the state of Florida and working with students who they struggled with math. I can do this too.
So awesome to know that there is this focus on trying to help identify and then help with resources to address it. So one of the things I'd like you to do is just for a minute, if you could share some of the signs of dyscalculia. I mean, and especially if, like adults could have it and they don't realize it. What is it? Because I know, like, the book describes three through adult. I mean, what are some of the signs?
Okay, so I'll put it this way. I'll break it into the age groups because what it literally looks like. But I think it's important to note, and this is where I'll do like a little bit of a lecture. This is about 5% of the population, so we're talking about millions of people. It is, and it's oftentimes comorbid. So if you have dyslexia or ADHD, we're sort of, I would say, I'll use the word guessing because we don't know yet. There's not enough studies, but it is coming in about 45 to 60% of those with like dyslexia and ADHD or language processing problems also have dyscalculia. We know it's not related to your IQ. Doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, it's equivalent. We also know something really important, which is that it's persistent, meaning you have it for the rest of your life, kind of like being nearsighted. I'll always be nearsighted. I was born nearsighted. And it's resistant to intervention. So I can take all the vitamins I want, but it's not going to improve my eyesight, but I can wear glasses. So it's not curable, but I can be made to function perfectly well. But it takes time and effort. So if I were a parent and I were looking at my youngest child, let's say somebody who's three, 4, or 5, that child would be struggling to learn how to count. They might be saying their numbers like 1, 2, 6, 7. They know they're supposed to be saying a number, but they have no conception that it's 1, 2, and then 3 follows and will always follow. They don't understand the meaning of counting and connecting a number to the word 3. A good example would be asking your child to hand you 3 cookies. They will simply scoop up a handful and hand it to you. If your child is actually in school, say first grade and up, you're going to have things like they cannot recall their basic math facts. Today, they practice and they knew that 3 plus 4 was 7. But if you ask them tomorrow, you can tell from their face that they know they should know and they try to find it, but they cannot find that 3 plus 4 is 7. They will keep counting with their fingers long after everybody else has moved away from their fingers and doesn't need it. If you put up a plus sign or a multiplication sign, it means nothing to them. It is a squiggle. Place value, 1001, 1001, to them is the same thing as 101. They don't understand that those digits tell something about the size of the numeral. Real common is they can't remember their phone number. And if you ask them to write down 637, they might write down 673 because there's a short-term memory problem that they cannot remember the order of the numbers. It's not that they're, flipping them or anything like that or reversing them. They simply can't remember the order. They remembered the numbers maybe, so they tried to do their best. If you make it to middle school, and this is a student who we often see, math test comes up. Teacher, my stomach's hurting. I need to go to the office. Or they don't show up for it. They don't turn in their homework. They won't play games that involve math. They will not keep score. If you ask them to do something on time, 10 minutes and 30 minutes are the same. They just have no real feeling for time. They get lost. But the anxiety is where it really starts to ramp up. And they will do anything they can to avoid math. They know they should know it, and they will go out of their way to just not have to prove that in that area, and I'm using this word very deliberately, this is a child who starts to call themselves stupid because they can't figure out why they don't know it. They seem to be smart, so they must be stupid because nobody knows that this is like nearsightedness or dyslexia. Nobody gives it a label, and once you do give it a label, then it's very much something that a child can wrap their head around, and a parent. I can fix this. So the older the child, the easier it is to hide it, but you'll start seeing them not be able, they'll take algebra 2 to 3 times and still not pass it. Measuring things, self-confidence, their career choices start to change. They wanted to be a doctor, and now they realize they can't pass the math and science. And they cannot generalize. It is just the higher level math courses are almost impossible. Now, oddly enough, some of those become easy because you don't have to do a lot of adding and subtracting. It's sort of formulaic. So that's sort of what it looks like. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Almost
I took a lot of time on that, but I have found that people want me to describe what they see in this, or this is what, oh, that sounds like me.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that having been a parent, and actually I still am a parent, but they're much older. But the parent's perspective, worked with parents for a long time, and that's the direction I'm coming from. Is that one of there's something little off that's happening, and you're trying to figure out what that might be. And is this just something of a stage, or is this something real? And I think that's and you're answering that. I mean, you're talking about possibilities that you're looking at, and so that leads me into the next part of this, which is to say, so if they suspect something's going on, what should they do? Talking about the parent.
The best thing that parents can do, and this is me speaking as an old principal, and you know exactly what this is, you tell them, let's get some information gathered, let's do a screener, and let's alert the child study team and get your child into MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Let's keep doing first best instruction in the classroom, tier 1, but let's also put them in some tier 2 where they do some small group work, we collect some data, we see if it's a matter of they missed some concepts and that's why they're struggling, or if in fact they're not able to comprehend them and I've got to go back and really fill things in. But I mean, it's that we've got the systems in place, but it's a parent adamantly asking for, I need my child evaluated, and then realizing we've got a lot of steps to collect data because the child knows something's going on. That's the biggest thing to me. And when you ramp up a child's anxiety, they don't need that. We can do it. And sometimes, I mean, intervention sometimes means you don't have to go for a diagnosis.
Gotcha. I appreciate that, because I know, it's needing some thoughts and, and someone to ask questions of and be able to say, this is what I'm seeing and can you help me figure this out? And I think that's so important. So let's talk about...
You were the prime person parents came to.
Right.
They'll go and ask the teacher, and if the teacher doesn't know what dyscalculia is, that there is a math disability, but to go to the guidance counselor if there is one, but to talk to the principal, principals should know that this is out there and that this is part of what we do in a free and appropriate public education. And oftentimes it can get handled with the staff that we've currently got, because the strategies that work for a child with dyscalculia are simply the best instruction that all children should be getting. Systematic, explicit instruction, using the use of the concrete representational abstract framework, multisensory, works for reading and it works for mathematics. And it's best instruction, period. You just need more of it when the child's got dyscalculia or some of the factors.
Gotcha. So let's go from, because we talked about how, and you're very much right, that at some point, the principal's probably going to have a conversation with a parent or two.
Yes.
And so what do you think about a teacher understanding, and do you think it's important that we make sure they understand what they might be seeing and such? I mean, and why? What do you think there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first line of defense for everything is the teacher. And none of us got into education with anything other in our hearts than to do the best for children. But I need to have the information as a teacher so that when something comes along, this is part of the normal bell curve. Everybody's a little different. And I do have the tools in my kit, explicit instruction. I've got all of those. I just need to vary it a little bit. And that's what in our hearts as teachers, we've always wanted to do. So it's just, I think 90% of this is going to be putting that in the hands of the teachers, because we know now that with ADHD and dyslexia, forewarned is forearmed. If I know what those are and the basic things I can do and who my support systems are in my school, those children, I want to provide the best education for. But when a child looks at me with total blankness in their eyes, like, I'm trying to do what you want, Ms. Smith, but I don't remember what 3 plus 4 is. I don't know what the Pythagorean theorem is. Then you need to know that, this isn't a child who didn't do their homework. I need to bring in my team. We need to start, MTSS, RTI.
Awesome. I appreciate you talking about that, because I can, like you said, the first line of defense so much, because the teacher spends so much time with the children, and would be them having an understanding of what certain challenges are that the children might be showing. And I think that's so important. All right. So here's a scenario for you. If you were the closing keynote of a conference for principals and you were sharing about dyscalculia, what would you want them talking about when they left your presentation?
Since I ask them every time they do leave, I can answer that one with real facts. I mean, the biggest thing to me when they leave is that they understand that it's not curable, but just like dyslexia, they've got the tools where an intervention, and a consistent intervention, means this kid can live out their dreams as an adult, do whatever they wanted to be in their career, that it is very, very doable, and it's not going to take a lot of money. It just means, arming everybody, the parents. And there are colleges. I actually got to visit one of them in Florida, where neither you nor I would probably be admitted. We don't have IEPs. The college is strictly for those who have ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, period. 85% of these students graduate and go on to grad school in any career they want. I want the principals to know that this is very, very addressable. They've already got the tools. And it's kind of like, I don't know, but I think most of my colleagues, when I was a principal, we love having an underdog to go into the fight and fight for. And this is a case of, this is a large group of children who there but for knowledge can do whatever they want to, because we love the kid that comes back to us 20 years later to thank the teacher and thank the principal and go, thank you for believing in me and finding me something, and then giving the parents hope. So, and I have everybody who leaves going, because I asked them, when you go back to your schools, what will you do tomorrow immediately that will make a difference? And I get 2 answers back. One is I will start focusing more on my explicit systematic instruction, because I was taught this. I just need to tighten up on my skill set for that, and it's very easy to do. Or I will do the BiddyWee, which is a graphic organizer that we've got on the website for free, but it helps children see the connection between the physical world, which is what mathematics is, and how it moves into the abstract, and they can see it all in one thing. And it's something that helps kids make the connections and go, oh, now I understand why that crazy formula is actually a way of doing this. So that's what they tell me. So I'm going to use those as my data points.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing about that. And I think it's neat because you actually do talk with principals and so forth. And so thanks for sharing what they need to be thinking about. Sandra, we're getting ready to wrap up. Where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
Well, first place to start would be the TouchMath website. We've got a nice section called Dyscalculia 101, and we have been gathering resources from all over, many of them just live links there. You can find the DySc screener there, pull that down for free. And we don't keep the data, so make sure you print it out. But they could use that if they go have that conversation. We cite places like the Learning Disabilities of America Association and a link to them, to IDA, the Dyscalculia Training and Research Institute. So we have gathered everything we can, understood.org, so that if a parent or a teacher is looking for, what's out there in my state, they can very quickly link to it and learn more about it. And of course, they can buy the book. It's like I'm going to put in a shameless plug. But yeah, we're starting to get more attention, and join the awareness. Just talk about it. Just ask people, do you know what dyslexia is? Of course I do. It's blah, blah. Well, do you know the name of the math disability? There's a math disability, anything to spread the word.
That's awesome advice. I'll put links to your book as well as to the other web locations that you talked about and in my show notes so they can easily find them. Last question, and it goes like this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? And if so, who was it, and what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
I got a lot of them. I think the one I remember the most, because I had her 2 years in a row, was Mrs. Squires. She was my humanities teacher for 2 of my high school years. And she gave me a real appreciation for what it was like to have a classroom that was made up of the whole continuum of students. And she managed to individualize Shakespeare for us, so that even the kids who came in and couldn't read walked out being thrilled with understanding it. She was one of the best multisensory teachers I've ever seen, because we would read it, we would draw it, we would build things, we would talk about it, we would see it. She was a good example of explicit systematic instruction long before the researchers gave it a name and actually were able to define the steps and stuff. So thank you, Mrs. Squires. I'm sitting where I am today because, in big part, because of you.
That's awesome. I love it, love it, love it. Sandra, thank you so much for talking with us about dyscalculia and your book, Something is Up, a practical guide to dyscalculia, tips, tools, and resources for parents, educators, and anyone affected by dyscalculia. Important information all educators and parents should take time to understand and learn more. Awesome focus. Wishing you the best.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.